So explain to us what libertarian is.
I hear that all the time. Let me tell you what libertarian is. Libertarian is someone who says you can be as liberal or as conservative as you want to be. Just don't force others to be like you.
Got it.
That's what we are all about. We are all about long-term solutions, not short-term solutions. We're all about changing culture, not just changing law. Law, we have to remember something. At the end of almost every single law is a guy or a gal with a gun who will put you in a cage. And if you don't want to go in that cage, he or she is going to kill you. That means you only use law when it really matters, not just because I'm angry, not because I don't like you, not because you should do some activity I think you shouldn't do or whatever the case may be. It's only for important things like life and liberty and property and things like that. That's when you use violence. That's when you use force. That's what libertarians are all about. Welcome to Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live. I'm so happy that you're with me today, a little bit past 3 p.m. on the East Coast. So happy to have you here. I have a very amazing guest with me today. I hope you will enjoy tremendously. You know you're going to like it, so do me a favor. Already hit the like button. Just do it now because it's going to be great. Let everyone know that you're doing this. And if you're watching this on Twitter, retweet this so that people can see this happening. It does matter, guys. Help me out here. I have with me someone who has run for Congress, has run for the State Board of Education of Texas, and is here with me today. The person who has always impressed me and still will again, I'm sure, Christy Mowrey. How are you?
I am doing great. We've got some of your New York weather blowing through here in Texas.
There we go.
I can hear as I'm driving back to the house today. I saw sprinklings of snow, and in Texas we get very excited about that.
Yes.
When it's short term, just a little bit for fun.
Well, they knew you and I would be talking, so they wanted to give you a little sprinkle of New York, is what it was.
Yeah, a little atmosphere. Yep.
There we go. Exactly. So, I've got to ask, if I could, someone like you, successful consultant, you have other things you could do with your life.
Sure.
But you chose to run. Why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always been in the business of children. Kids have always been important to me. I was a foster parent. I've raised 3 kids. I was a teacher, a little bit in public, but primarily private schools. And there's nothing to me there's nothing more important, than a more important mission, I guess, if you will, than to make sure I preserve liberty for kids and to help them become the very best they can be. We focus a lot on what's happening in the here and now as adults and changing things now. But if we want to be honest, it's the kids that are really going to be carrying on liberty for future generations.
Right.
And the reason I ran for Congress, which segued into why I ran for school board, was because I could see the devastating effects of this massive taxpayer funded scheme of indoctrination that 90% of our kids are attending for 8 hours a day. So basically our nation will be decided by what's happening in our schools right now. And so what better cause? It's one of the most important things I think all of us can be doing.
And I think most parents think people like us are crazy, right? They think like, no, the system is great. Because I think they believe in their heads, the system is what happened when they went through, right? Sure. And that was the way to get through successful and be life was to get an A in class, and then everything was going to be awesome for you. I feel like most parents think we're nuts.
Most parents used to think that, but the times are changing, and I'm seeing
very good,
very positive trends, and that keeps me motivated because there's a lot of forces against changing the way we educate our kids from as you said, the traditional way. What's ingrained in society is just something normal that our the past generations have gone through school systems. And Thomas Sowell, even when he was speaking on education, and he is brilliant, he was saying how in his time he got a decent education in public schools, but he could see what he called, now we kind of refer to it as indoctrination, and he referred to it as brainwashing, changes that happened very quickly. And even from the very first class that this shows my age, but in the early 90s, I was did an internship in a first grade classroom. And even from that point until now, the difference in what is happening in our schools is incredible, and not in a good way. So I think that back in the 90s and years ago, people didn't realize it, and there weren't a whole lot of people even exposing the problems in school. We had Milton and Rose Friedman, we had Thomas Sowell, we had there were people, John Taylor Gatto, who could recognize what was happening, and they were trying to make change. But unfortunately, there weren't a whole lot of groups like there are today. Right. Whether it be parents groups, or in Texas, we have Parents Matter, we have Texas Policy Institute, we have there's all sorts of different organizations that are fighting for school choice or educational choice, and in the courts. So I see and interrupt me if you want. I can talk. Right?
Yeah. I'm like, yes. I got my head. I'm becoming a bobblehead. Oh, good. Yeah. I love it.
This has never been a weak point of mine. So yes, just interrupt when you feel necessary. But
let me do it right now if I could. For those of you who want to see more of what Christy is doing, head over to her website, christymowrey.org. And if you're listening to this, that's Christy with a CH, not with a K. And her last name is spelled Mowrey. So .org, not .com, .org. So if you want to check it out, you can see what she's doing. Christy with a CH, Mowrey.org. Please continue. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so what's happened in COVID really, and maybe we can circle back to COVID, has been, while it's, we wish it didn't happen, but let's look at the silver lining of anything that happens negative in our life. We always have to take a positive out of it.
Now I have to make sure it wasn't COVID. It was the lockdowns.
Sure. The lockdowns, the mandates, all of the government, as anything, as libertarians, as anytime the government intervenes in something, it's going to be a disaster, right?
Yep.
So that's exactly what happened with COVID. It wasn't COVID; it was the government intervention of COVID that was the problem.
Correct. Absolutely.
So there was little strides in this, as far as trailblazing the way to educational freedom. You have to start with the courts. People think it's the legislators. They think it, but really it's all done through litigation. So we had a couple of, back in the 90s. So it started with, believe it or not, a collaborative effort between a Democrat and a Republican. In Milwaukee, there was a case, Clint Bolick, who is now he's on the Supreme Court of Arizona. He was a staunch supporter and litigator in these cases regarding school choice vouchers. It was him and a lady named Polly Williams, and she was a state representative who was a Democrat, who noticed that, her son wasn't getting the education that he should from a public, the government schools. Long story long, those two got together and they won they won a case in Milwaukee which supported vouchers. She wrote the legislation. It was going to be attacked by the unions, of course, and it was. And then there were more cases. There was Zellman versus Simon Harris in Ohio, and then most recently the Supreme Court case, which was Carson versus Macon. If you recall back just a few months ago, the Supreme Court ruled that in Maine, I believe, it was constitutional to give voucher money to religious schools.
I remember.
That's where the battle has really been, both at the state level.
But hold on, though, right? I get what you're saying. It has to go through courts.
Sure.
But someone is funding the court cases, right? Someone is throwing money at lawyers to make sure this happens. Is this usually the teachers' unions? Is it usually parental groups? Is it usually PACs? Like, who is getting behind each of the sides to push this through court? Is it just zealots who are activists in whatever they feel or love?
Yeah, sometimes it's the organizations, as far as the ones that are trying to stop school choice. There is an attorney, Shannon, who is really the adversary of Bolick through most of these cases that were done at the federal and state and even local levels. And that, of course, was done through teachers' unions. I mean, that
Yep.
is it's the leftists, the Democrats, and Democrats, as you know, 90% of campaign contributions from teachers' unions go to Democrats. So, I mean, they're there.
I live in New York State. I know that very well.
You know how it goes. You know how it goes.
Yes.
And then at the state level, there's something called the Blaine. Most states have this thing called the Blaine Clause, which is basically hundreds of years ago.
Okay.
Anyway, this Congressman Blaine tried to pass federal law to make basically to separate. It's the separation of church. They didn't want any penny, any money whatsoever, not even any donations going to religious schools. It always comes down to the religious piece, right?
Okay.
And then so that's been the problem at the state level with, let's say, vouchers, is a lot of parents who want to put their kids in private schools, a lot of times they're religious schools. So they're very common. Those are the ones that have popped up. Those are the ones already established.
Both of my daughters have gone to Greek school.
Yeah. So, so Texas has it. I believe New York has in their state constitution, this Blaine Clause. Some states don't, only a handful.
Yeah, because New York State has made education a right. Right? In New York State, in our constitution, we've made education a right. And the state must pay for grades. If I remember our constitution right, grades 1 through 12. They don't have to pay for kindergarten. That's a separate budget item. But the Constitution says you must pay for grades 1 through 12. It's a right in New York State. And of course, they've got as you said, they make that exception, right? Unless you go to, religious school, then you're just screwed. Yes.
And that's where a lot of the battles are right now in the court cases going on. So that's one, is in the courts. And then next, I look at it like when you're trailblazing something, you're moving these branches out of the way, right? So you're fighting these cases in court, and then it's your court of public opinion. That's where the parents come in, because parents got a window into what was really going on in their schools through COVID. And it was great. It was a great awakening to see what was happening. And they were deeply disturbed. And so, until you see it, until you're actively involved within in the districts, and you see how parents are sometimes treated by the administrators, you don't see the problems. And then dive deeper into it. And if you dive deep in Texas, and I don't know how, I know New Yorkers like their football too, but in Texas, what's very disturbing is that we have, like $90 million in bond debt. We have high school stadiums popping up that are costing taxpayers $60 million for a little high school stadium, football stadium. We have so many crazy things with the spending that it's not just what we call the indoctrination and the curriculum that parents have a problem with. We also have one of the highest property tax in the nation.
Well, hold on one second. I'm just going to be very forward with you. I don't mean to brag here, but New York State, we got you beat. I'm just saying, when it comes to being terrible, we've got most states beat. I mean, we really, we have, literally, in case you don't know this, we literally have the highest tax burden in the entire nation. And we spend over $29,000 per kid per year in New York State. In certain areas, over $30,000 per year per kid. And we rank in the bottom 10 of 51. If you count DC, it's 51 total districts when they count states and DC. We rank 42nd, 44th, 40 something in all of them. Unless, though, if you add in our colleges, if you don't go 1 through 12, you go add college, we rank higher, right? Because New York State colleges are decent. So that pulls us up. But if you get rid of colleges and just do our K through 12, we rank in the bottom 25, always usually the bottom 10. So when it comes to wasteful, terrible spending and lots of money, I got you beat.
You do. And it's actually shocking. It's really shocking. And then if you look at the U.S. as a whole, not even state by state, compared to other countries, we're scoring at the bottom half. While China and Japan, they're out there making innovations, and they're at the top, off the charts on academics. And we're sitting here in crowded classrooms discussing what type of furry a child wants to be that day. We're not doing
So I think what you made a valid point. I think what as the Libertarian Party, I think as a whole, we kind of dropped the ball on this one. We really should have been, this should have been our time, right? That everyone came to us and we didn't do a great job. The Republicans did a better job than we did in messaging, right? In getting out ahead of it. With that in mind, what made you decide to run Libertarian versus trying to jump on the Republican bandwagon, which I don't know if it would have, but in certain cases might have been a better deal.
Yeah, well, and fun fact is I was asked to run as a Republican and told by a large Republican group that if I ever wanted to get elected, I needed to run as a Republican. And I said, well, I'm not a Republican. So there's that.
There is that. That's true.
As libertarians, I think we're very principled, sometimes almost to a fault. We stick with, as you know, there's a lot of infighting on occasion within the Libertarian Party and different caucuses, and but we're all on the same mission. We're trying to accomplish the same things, and that is freedom in our lifetime, right? And that will start with our kids. So I do agree with that the Libertarians have dropped the ball, but also when I ran for Congress, it was, I guess the timing was really perfect. I initially was going to run as a paper candidate just to get on the ballot because you of all people understand ballot access laws.
Yes.
How awful they are. And so in Texas, we were trying to get as many candidates on the ballot as possible because we were in litigation regarding ballot access laws.
Right.
They were the Republicans were trying to kick, and the Democrats were trying to kick the Greens off. The Republicans were trying to kick the Libertarians off. And so the more people that we had in this lawsuit, the better. So the more people running, obviously, that were going to be represented. Then it turned into, and then COVID happened, right? So I said I was going to run for Congress as a paper candidate. COVID happened. And I'm like, wait a minute. We can't be locked down. We can't, the mask mandates. And at the time I was running my school, and I was, of course, we were mandated to put masks on kids and this, that, and the other. And I said, I sent an email out to my teachers, my families, and I said, look, you own yourself. I'm not going to tell you to put a mask on a 6-year-old. And I'll tell you that if that becomes an issue in the classrooms, I'm going to tell the child to take it off. Because I did my due diligence, did my research, looked at what was happening in China with those kids. And, I came to the conclusion that, okay, this is probably, we need to protect the elderly. We need to use some common sense here. And
common sense. That was your problem, Christy. That was your problem, common sense.
How dare I? But I found myself invited to rallies, relatively large rallies, where I was speaking with Don Huffines and Alan West, these Republicans that later were running for governor. And I got to speak right in between them. It was really an honor, but it was also a way for me to get my ideas, my ideologies, my libertarian thoughts, and why I think that libertarianism will work better overall and everything. And it really was an opportunity that just fell on my lap as far as COVID goes, because nobody else was speaking out. My Republican opponent wasn't going to dare be out in public during COVID. And I'm like, bring it on.
Right.
Wherever you want me to be, I'll be. And then a friend of mine, Shelley Luther, her salon closed down and she went to jail, and I was there.
Yes.
Every opportunity I could get, I got in front of the microphone and tried to get my ideas across. And a lot of people came up to me and they're like, tell me more about what is the libertarian again? And then we go back to kind of the trying to explain that we're not just pot smokers, that, not just Republican pot smokers.
Right, exactly. Yes, absolutely. So, let me grab a couple of comments. Some people are popping up some comments, if I could. And Joe asked a question, and it's a good question. What does parental rights mean to you? And I think it's a valid point. I think a lot of people, when they use that phrase, it means different things for different people, right? Someone's like, well, that means I'm not mandated to vax. Some people, that means go into, what school I get to go to. That means, right? I think there's different, something to think about family court. I mean, you have from different levels, right? From being in a school and also running for office. Do you have a definition for parental rights?
Yeah, well, actually, Texas just, Greg Abbott just wrote a parental bill of rights. I read through it, as in, basic stuff was in there. But as far as parental rights, is every family has the right to raise their child as they see fit. We may not agree with it, so long as it doesn't, there's no harm being done to the child. You may be raised in a different religion. You may be raised with different ideals. I mean, every parent has the right to decide what is best for their child, and only parents, not bureaucrats legislating in Austin, but the parent knows their child best. So as far as I'm concerned, parents have the right to decide how to educate their kids, so long as there's no physical harm or psychological harm being done.
Jamie says, remember, Republicans like big government too. He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
No, yeah, Republicans love their big government. That's why I'm a libertarian.
There we go.
I learned that pretty quick. Yeah.
But there's a point that Alexander brings up, which I want to talk about too. Alexander says, I have mixed feelings on vouchers. Love the concept, but vouchers are another big government program. Big government programs create constituencies to dependents who will fight to preserve the program. And I'll give you my 2 cents on this, Christy, before please, extrapolating how you feel. I agree with his worry, right? I am torn. I say to myself, if I could have a better system than vouchers, I would take it. My worry is I can't get a better, with the current environment, can I get a better system? Maybe the vouchers is the best I can get. And to his point though, do we want to take the voucher system better, but then worry that that may then lock us into only vouchers? Or do we want to be more, maybe hardcore is the word, and go, no, if we don't get our system, no vouchers, because we want our system? Where do you land on this?
Yeah. That's an excellent question, and something that I had to really look into as well. And when it comes to educational freedom, there's really more than just vouchers. There's educational savings account, there's tax credits, there's a lot of different options and splinter ideas of those options. But as far as vouchers themselves, it is one way to get the power away from the bureaucrats and give it back to the parents. We're already being coerced into paying taxes that pays for school. So in my opinion, we're better off taking incremental steps to get that money to the parent where they can decide where their child learns best. So yeah, I get the mixed feelings. I also understand that sometimes when you have things like this, the private schools will get concerned that government will then come in and try to regulate them, which is a huge concern. I would love an idealistic system where everything was done privately, where the free market came in. That would be ideal. But we have to also be realistic and responsible.
Yes.
We also have to make sure, I refer to it, it's a weird analogy, but when I'm trying to maybe convert libertarians or help them see my point of view, it's like sort of chipmunks at the park. You're sort of feeding them some bread. They come a little closer. They come a little closer. We need to feed little tidbits here and there. It's going to take incremental steps to get to a point where we can have a bigger free market system, a private system that, maybe one day the kids that are still using the government funding will be needs-based. I don't really know, but I know at this point, vouchers is a big step in the right direction to give power back to the parents where it belongs.
I like the idea because I think you're right. Many parents feel like there's no option, right? That I live in this place. They tell me to send my kid to school. I'll do that. So maybe I'll give more money on the cake bake sale or whatever. I'll do that and that'll help, or that kind of thing. But you're right. I think they often feel like there's no chance. And with the vouchers, at least something happens. I think you're right. If we get enough parents to understand, and with the COVID lockdowns, many did. I've seen a huge increase in New York State in homeschooling. That was not a thing in New York State. If you go back 4 or 5 years, it's not a thing. I mean, we thought of homeschool. Who does that? Now it's like, oh, you homeschool too? Oh yeah, me too. So I think that also happened. I see where your point is. I think it's very valid where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Let me grab another one here if I could. C now says, yes, we're trying to get our school district to pay for an alternative school that actually meets our daughter's needs. the local district is okay, but they can't meet her particular needs. And I think this goes to your point, Chris, the idea of, why shouldn't we be able to find a school that will meet anyone's daughter's son's needs, and then
Sure.
we pick that school that is as close to possible with our vouchers?
Yeah, absolutely. And a good friend of mine has a son who is autistic, and she's always saying how, her public school is okay. There's a program within her public school, her government school. I got to use the right verbiage here. That works okay for her, but there's one she'd rather go to, but she can't afford it on her hairdresser's salary. She can't afford to put a child there. And that, to me, that's morally wrong when $10, $12, $15,000, not even close to what it is in New York, but in the state of Texas is about what we spend, depending on the district, per child. She should have the right to take that money and put it where her child learns best.
Yes.
I mean, nobody should be able to argue that parents know what's best for their child and that they love their child enough to put them in a program that would meet their needs.
Yes. I want to go one step further, though. The question is always that I always get as well, Larry, the parents don't know any better, right? They're not educators. They don't know what's right for their kid. And what I would say is that might be true, who knows? But if I'm going to trust a bureaucrat who doesn't know the kid versus a parent who does know the kid, and a bureaucrat who's trying to make their numbers and look good in front of their bosses versus a parent who loves their kid, I'm going to trust the parent. And even though parents will make mistakes, bureaucrats will too. But when a parent makes a mistake, they're going to fix it. They're going to go out of their way to fix it because it's their kid and they love them and they care. A bureaucrat's going to cover it over, punish all the rest, and act like nothing happened.
Right. And actually, our public schools were founded on the Prussian model by Horace Mann. And that model was basically because they thought parents weren't capable of raising their kids. They thought that they needed to be in these factory schools to prepare them for either war or, working in factories. And
back then they weren't wrong. The Prussians were kind of right back then in Prussia. They were kind of right. Yes.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they were shoving all their kids into the military and into factories back in the 1800s. So they were probably right.
Yeah, that's true. So they wanted to model the same system in the United States, which is basically teaching our kids to conform, become statist, basically worship the government, do everything that they're told, and knock the individualism out of them, which is exactly what's happening. The intent, the intent of the founding of public schools, that is exactly what's happening to an extreme. And when people say, well, as far as parents go, that maybe, how do you know that the environment that a parent chooses is going to be good enough for a child? How do you know there's not going to be dangers? How do you know, how do we know it's not going to be a crappy school? Well, to that, I say, step foot inside a government school right now and tell me that what they're doing can be any worse. I mean, we have schools and it isn't just about the indoctrination. It's not. People think that's the main focus. And that is why a lot of people are upset. Sure. CRT, social emotional learning, the list can go on and on about this leftist agenda that's being pushed in schools. But they forget the fact that it's also replacing actual academics. There's hardly any academics being taught in schools. And when it is, sometimes it's just little tidbits of information in order to pass a test. So they're not getting this in-depth, they're not getting this in-depth education on.
They think they're helping, but the current system, and I live in New York City, and I see the wealthiest of the wealthy and the poorest of the poor. I see them all the time. And what's happening now is a system, and I'm sure it's across the country, but I know it's in New York. If you can afford to either have tutors or you can afford to have a parent stay home and basically homeschool the kid while they're in school, your kid will do fine. Mm-hmm. But you have to have the tutors or the parent at home who is talented enough to help the kid through school. If you don't have those two, your kid's going to struggle. Right. But the sad part is they'll still pass. So they'll get a degree and they'll know nothing. And I see it as I have tutored my daughter. I've had tutors for my daughters. I've watched them go through public school and private school and Greek school. I've been through all, and homeschool. I've homeschooled my kids too. I've gone through all of them. And I've watched the difference in their peer group. And it's night and day. The parents who are in the schools who cannot afford tutors or cannot afford someone to stay home and guide their child through school, their kids struggle. And it's not fair. And we think it is, but you're totally right. The system is set up for the wealthy to do just fine and for the kids who are poor to struggle.
Right, right. So we need a comprehensive plan to change schools or change our system. And I do think that starts with choice. No option should be off the table when it comes to preserving liberty for our future generations, which is
so. Let me ask you:
when they are educated.
You ran both times, 2 separate offices, but both in Texas, right? And you got your name out there. Did you make any impact? So what kind of impact did you make in both runs?
Yeah. Well, I did a lot better the second time when I ran for state board of education. Yeah. After kind of analyzing my results, you go through your campaigns and then get to the end. And as libertarians, you hope to get a higher percent. And I do believe I did set a record for state board of education percentages, which is good. And then I went county by county to see where I did well and try to figure out why. The very rural counties, I did, it was only pulling in like about 1.5%. College towns, it's getting closer to 4%. My county where I live, and it was the district is spanned over 11 counties, from just above Dallas to Oklahoma to Arkansas. So it was a big.
That's a big district. Wow, Texas is not a small state. That's a lot.
Yeah, about the size of New Jersey, it feels like. So analyzing the results, I could understand, the why behind it, which gives me hope, because with the college town, the county and the college town, I did significantly better than the extremely rural areas, which still believe that their public schools are okay. It's ingrained in rural areas. Actually, they will vote Republican. They voted for Abbott 80%. Basically in rural, but through the open government records, where you can find out the losing my train of thought, the how people vote, where they work, right? So the ISDs, the people that worked for the government schools, donated 90% to Democrats. So so I tell people, in your rural areas, within your schools, within that administration, it's not just the kids that are getting the propaganda of the left, it's the teachers too.
Yes.
So it's the fox and the hen house. But in rural areas, it's a big employer, the public schools are.
Absolutely.
They don't want to, think that their Uncle Bob.
I'm not going to vote against my job.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yes.
Exactly. So
I'm going to vote against my job. Sure.
So, it's hard to say what the cause and effect of why, I did better in some areas than others, but
is there a big, maybe there isn't, but is there a simple or big learning point that you have? Like, this is some axiom I now know because of running, or is there something like that for you? I built a the reason why I ask it is, when I ran both times, what I really got in my head was that I didn't know really, not that I didn't know, that I didn't really understand at a gut level. It was how much pay to play it was. Like, that was my lesson. Like, I'm like, wow, this is really pay to play. That was kind of my lesson. Yeah. Did you have one in yours, or did you already know, or did it reinforce something?
I know that I did not realize how much work libertarians had to put, I guess, to put into actually getting any kind of media attention, to getting our voice out there, to be able to be in debates. I took every opportunity, every survey that came into my inbox, every debate that I was asked to go to. You don't say no, and you don't back down. And sometimes you have to reach out to those people and say, hey, I want to be here. Can I speak here? It happened more when I was running for Congress, because nobody else wanted to be out during COVID. And I'm like, pick me. I'll be happy to come to your event. So it was a lot.
It's funny you say that, because people will sometimes get angry at me and go, Larry, why'd you go on that guy's podcast? Because there's no one else to go on. Like, no one wants to see me. This person will. I don't care if you don't like him or her. I'm going because I got to have some media. I got to get out there. I got to do things. Got to get my name out. So I'll take what I can get. You don't like this person? Oh, well, find me somebody else and I'll go on their show instead. But it's difficult. So, yeah, I totally get that completely.
It's difficult. And to learn to go to places that might be a little more hostile. And, again, you build a thick skin when you run. And I'm people might say that I'm kind of a sensitive person, but that changes when you run for office. But you have to be guided by your principles and your mission. And the thing, a lot of times with libertarians, and and some from both the other parties as well, but you have to really believe in what you're doing. I am so there's nothing more important to me than the kids in our country, in this state, even my own kids. And they taught me probably more than any class I ever took in college. My own kids, one of my daughter's an attorney, one of them, the other one's an artist. They both are happy in life doing what they're doing.
Here we go.
Different personalities. They're successful, they're happy, and they took two different routes. My son's just started college and he's studying engineering, but I learned a lot from them. Don't stifle, like our public government schools do. Don't stifle the God-given talents and interests of your kids. As parents, our job is to develop those, to figure out what 100%. They want, and to develop those talents and to put our kids in a system that will further develop their talents so that they can have successful careers.
Here we go. Brian says, I had a discussion with a Democrat about taxing people to pay for schools. She was convinced that parents wouldn't educate their children without being forced by the government. I told her she must have a very poor opinion of herself. Crickets afterwards. So it's a valid point. Would parents not educate their kids? I mean, are we really concerned about that? I mean,
no.
I don't know. It seems crazy to me, right?
I mean, yeah. Do parents not feed their kids? I mean, do parents not buy clothes for their kids? I think most parents love their kids, and most parents want the best for their kids.
Absolutely.
And if they don't, then we have to have a whole nother conversation about
correct.
If those kids belong in the family. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Christy. By the way, for those of you who want to see what Christy's doing, please head over to her website. It's Christy with a CH, CHRISTY, not I-Y, and Mowrey, which is Mowrey, sorry, it's MOWREY.org. So ChristyMowrey.org to see what she's doing. So what's the future for you?
Well, that's a great question. After this last election, I thought, you know what? I'm done. I have 200 acres in East Texas, little cabin on the lake. I'm going to become a prepper. I'm going to be a prepper. I'm going to have a chicken coop. I mean, if you've seen the price of eggs, I was really motivated. And then I thought maybe I'll just back away from politics, go to a few events here and there. And then I realized I'm not capable of that. Things were happening. I saw things on the news, and even my sister looked at me and she's like, you can't. You can't, you can't back away from this. And I can't. There's something deep inside me that says you have to get involved. I'm actually in the middle of writing a couple of kids' books.
Nice.
Yes. So kind of based on the non-aggression principle. There's so many books out there that are more leftist or don't have really the real libertarian morals that I would like to convey. So I'm actually finished one of them, and it's just a little pet project. I'm still doing my consulting, and I may look at running at the local level, but I really want to strategize and try to put my talents and energy where I think it will travel the best. So
I love it. So I'll be bumping into you again, I'm sure then.
Yes, I hope so.
There we go. Nice. That's awesome. I love that. Well, I want to say thank you for coming out, Christy. I appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your busy day. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome. Thank you, Larry.
Yes. Everyone else, thank you so much for watching. I will be on again tonight at 7, and it's education week. I've got someone talking about school choice tonight with Mr. DeAngelis will be showing up tonight. And then tomorrow evening at 7 p.m., I have a homeschool expert who wrote the book Homeschool Hacks. So, man, it's education week for me this week. I will see you all very soon.